Thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome or welcome back to BRIC's Pre-Apprenticeship Speaker Series, where we aim to give you an inside look at the various careers across entertainment, media, and tech with help from the industry pros themselves. My name is Sarah. I'm BRIC's Director of Communications and your moderator for the series. And today we're joined by Raegan. You may see her as a floating head at the bottom of your screen there. And Raegan is an innovative creative technologist at Magnopus and an Afrofuturist. And in this session, Raegan will prepare you with all the tools and strategies that you need to know to successfully pursue a career in virtual production and immersive technologies. So before we get started, I do want to remind everyone we have a Q&A at the end of our session here. So make sure to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you have any questions you want to submit for Raegan along the way. And with that, Raegan, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. My name is Raegan Brown. I'm so grateful to be here. It's been such a pleasure working with the BRIC Foundation. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of the virtual production and immersive media space and pursuing careers in that space. And I wanted to do it from a lens that felt really personal to me. I am a creative technologist, and I'll go a little bit more into my background, but I am a creative technologist as well as an artist, and something that is really important to me is mixing my love for art and technology. And so this has been such an amazing pathway and journey into this space. And so I kind of wanted to just share a little tips and tricks that kind of helped me get here, and that has helped me, I feel like, thrive in this space. So I decided to name this forum today the Creative Technology Playbook, turning creative and technical skills into a career in virtual production and immersive media. You're going to notice you're going to see a lot of colors. I identify as a futurist. I also am, like I said, an artist, so colors are very important to me. I think they keep us interested, as well as the shell. You're going to see the shell in the corner. That's actually just my consulting and my agency, and just the brand of myself. I believe that everything that makes up who I am as a Black queer woman in the creative and tech spaces is within my shell, and in living out my life, I am coming out of my shell. And so I'm excited to share that part of myself with you. And so, just to start, one of the things that is really big with me is mindfulness and checking in. Um, I think we're right now in a time where a lot is going on, and it can be really easy to become dysregulated. And so I try to ground myself in affirming myself. And so I do this at the beginning of every workshop. And so if I know I can't hear you, but if you could say, I am enough, and go into this session with some thoughts around some of your innate passions or your creative interests that really brought you to this space, and how it would inspire you to better receive and engage during this session. I am enough, you are enough, and everything that you know right now. I know that we have a lot of emerging technologists, artists, and creatives in this session. Everything that is within you is enough, and is within your shell. So let's go into a little bit about who I am. You will find that I love to identify as a multi-hyphenated hobbyist who loves and does all things. So my name is Raegan, like I said. I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida. I love it hot, so when I heard 80 degrees, that made me super happy. I'm currently in Los Angeles, California. My background is in all things performance, visual arts, dance. I actually was a pro Hawks cheerleader for the Atlanta Hawks. I graduated from Spelman College in 2017 and got my bachelor's in computer science. I then traveled to North Carolina A&T, and Greensboro, and got my dual bachelor's in computer engineering. I am also a happy and proud Spring 2019 initiate of Delta Sigma Theta sorority incorporated. I then moved to Los Angeles to pursue my master's at University of Southern California in computer science, multimedia, and creative technologies. And so in my first two degrees, I definitely I was like, wow, I am so happy to be able to get in a perspective of technology from a front end and a back end. I really wanted to have a holistic view. But I'm going to be honest, I completely separated my interest with art from my interest with technology for quite a long time. I was the kid that was tinkering and opening up my computers and my phones. And my dad was like, why don't you just get a career in this so that you can stop breaking all the tools that we have in this house? And so that kind of inspired me. Um, and so when I first moved to LA, I was really trying to figure out, this is the place for creatives. How can I merge my loves? And it actually I was actually connected with Alton Glass and GRX Immersive Labs. And I want to start by saying there's such an importance in community when it comes to a lot of these spaces. While during my time uh, at USC, um, I felt very lonely. I was one of three African American students of 300 that graduated in my class. And so, a lot of the time people work together, and I felt very alone sometimes. And so to find community was really helpful. People who were diverse and had so many different perspectives and creative interest, and going through this program. And so I I became really passionate on this concept and idea of the taproot. And the taproot is essentially a root that branches out into different roots. And so I've always felt that is important. You can't change the whole world, but if you touch one person, you don't know how many people they will touch. And so I do want to show you this video of our virtual production workshop. I'm now an instructor and a mentor with GRX Immersive Academy, and their fellowship. And I think that being able to have people that relate to you, have similar and different interests than you, and people that do and don't look like you, is been really vital in my growth in this space. I'm gonna go ahead and share. Ac- I, okay, I am sharing my sound. So this was probably like 2021. That was quite some time ago. Um, but as far as kind of some of the things we learned in this organization that we continue to teach are immersive media and community storytelling and ways to impact our community utilizing these tools. Some of the tools that we're learning is motion capture, whether that be the OptiTrack, the Macopi, or the AR-51, which is trackerless motion capture. We're working with LED volumes, as you can see here, the capstone for that cohort. They all created their own environments that got projected. As backgrounds for the Latin Exorcist screenwriting group. We also had our most recent cohort, they all made different types of immersive media. We have 360 VR, we teach photogrammetry, Adobe Premiere Pro and utilizing Adobe tools for editing, as well as what else are we talking about? We have Unreal Engine foundations, real-time production, and also the ethical use of AI. So again, I want to say there's such an importance with community. And if you find a community that is in this space, please run towards it. It'll definitely help you in the long run. professionally. So once I graduated college, I had a couple of steps along the way. I did start off with Intel, and I kind of maintained with Intel for a little bit. I started off as a bio software engineer. I wanted to get into those, engineering chops, and I actually really fell in love with lower level programming. I think the idea of just logic design really interests me. I'm a very logical person. Not always, though. I'm pretty impulsive sometimes too. And from there, I ended up kind of going to a couple of roles within Intel. I was a project manager for their field programmable gate array (FPGA) group at one point. I also served as a technical intern creating AI. This was kind of like this was like back in like 2019, I think. Um, uh, AI simulations using metadata object detection for like grocery stores and different environments. I also spent some time at NASA, the Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, and what you can see here, this was kind of my first real experience with like Unity. I started really getting into Unity, and I had the pleasure of working with a CAD model and doing a lot of the texturing and materials of one of their W8 facilities, which you can see here on this. It looks like a regular LED volume, but it's actually an AR wall. It's called a cave automatic virtual environment. And so what you have is like he's wearing some glasses that is tracking. This is some of the I would say the older technologies at this point, but because it's an ever evolving field. But I pretty much worked for the summer on this space, and so it was used for onboarding and tutorials for employees because you can't take employees to the W8 compressor facility all the time. It's kind of one of those spaces that is not always accessible. So, utilizing immersive tools in that way and being able to do onboarding for employees was really helpful. I spent some time at AT&T as a network engineer intern as well, working with their Sunday football team. And so I was doing just some network engineering there, but my big interest came from a project that we did where I was the owner of our intern project, and we created an AR app um, for education. And I fell in love. That was my second time being able to have experience with Unity, but using Vuforia and some more XR tools. And so I started to see a place for me where I felt like I could creatively invest in myself as well as technically. I then went back to Intel full time and I started doing work around gaming. I wasn't a gamer naturally, but I felt like gaming was really pertinent in this space because, you know, Unreal Engine, Unity, these are game engines at their cores, even though you can do so many things with them. And so I worked on the gaming team. I was a systems and software optimization engineer there. And in that role, I was really doing testing and seeing how some of these DCCs like Maya, Blender, and then like Unreal and any Adobe products, and seeing how they were working on our systems and testing iteratively over and over again the same processes. I started to learn how to, utilize a lot of them because I had to test over and over. But something that was really important to me too was like, I want to be in community still. And so I actually took on some community organization initiatives. As you can see on the bottom here, this was with Landfest um, and Global Game Jam. Uh, I led or owned a community initiative where we sent 50 Intel nuke systems across the globe. We sent to different countries in Europe. Um, I tried to send to a couple countries in Africa, but there were some issues with customs, as well as Asia. And Global Game Jam is the largest game jam hackathon in the globe. And so that was really that was a really powerful um, experience for me to learn how to do and to work across countries as well. I'm now at Magnopus. I am a senior creative technologist here. These are some of the projects that I've been so proud to be able to collaborate on teams, Allo Moves XR, as well as the Times Square Takeover in with Ice Spice and Snoop Dogg. As a creative technologist, I do a lot of different things actually, and I'll talk a little bit more about those. But I've been really blessed to be able to explore my creativity in these different spaces, and I'm just happy to share some of that with you guys. So, a lot of the things I talk about as far as my community framework is immersive technologies for community design, leveraging those and how they impact our communities in positive ways. I talk about cultural futurisms, all different types, because I believe that they're unified futurism and to see each other, although we all look different in each other's futures, is important. Also, I believe in Sankofa principles, looking at our past in order to leverage the current resources and technologies that we have to imagine more positive futures. And then lastly, I have the Shell, which is my creative consulting agency, as well as where I do workshops. I host workshops for the community, teaching hands-on immersive technology foundations. I talk about futurism, and I also do some work, some volunteer work with Chaos Kids in Leimert Park, working with kids and making circuits out robots out of circuits and teaching, showing them VR. So let's go into it. What is creative technology? I would like to kind of start off with what that is. I get asked that a lot, and I believe that it can sometimes we use buzzwords like immersive. Immersive gets used a lot. And creative technology, and sometimes we're just like, well, what is that really? And so this is how it was presented to me professionally, and it has definitely been quite the journey in identifying what it has meant even more for me specifically. So professionally, it is a T-shaped professional, I would say. You're pretty much broad across the disciplines of design, engineering, and art, and you end up having kind of a deep specialty in the range of a T, right? In one specific one. Not to say that you can't be skilled in all, you definitely can, but there you see so we as people seem to take an interest towards a particular one. So the top of the T is your fluency across all multiple disciplines, right? And you can speak or understand the language in each one of those disciplines. The stem of the T is your deep go down. That's your core. And I'm not going to say I put core value, but more so the core of your interest, what you really desire and what you like to do. You a lot of the time end up being the connective tissue between a lot of your creative teams and your technical teams. And I kind of just put some of my my own tea. I feel like design is my deep. I really care about how an experience makes you feel and the steps you take in order to get through an experience. And so that has really been a big impact in just how I see myself as not only a creative technologist, but an immersive design engineer. And you're not just a maker, you're a translator, right? You're a bridge, and you're a problem solver across multiple disciplines. And so that means you might end up playing several different roles, and kind of leaning in between different disciplines, right? I think that's something super exciting, especially if you're somebody who has ADHD like me, and who loves to just try new things. Another thing is like being able to have the ability to learn things fast and adapt and be self-taught has really also been helpful. And so when we talk about the art discipline, you might end up doing some 3D modeling. You might need to create something really quickly because you're pretty much full stacking. Like a lot of the time in this role, you are prototyping. You're doing a lot of prototyping, and when you're prototyping, you kind of need to have the the initial understanding of a lot of the foundational principles to build something up, to stand something up. A lot of the times I'm prototyping for my team here, and then they're taking it and the artist will continue to refine the art. The engineers will do more of the refining of taking it on the back end. So it's a really important role, especially when it comes to like prototyping and building and being able to have cross-disciplinary skills. You might be a concept artist, right? You might be creating visuals for what doesn't exist yet, and giving thought and ideas around it, being able to take technical terms and think of them in creative ways in which they can be implemented. You might have to animate. I fell in love with motion capture. I'm a dancer, so that was something that really I became passionate about, and I've even started to like lean into being a VJ a little bit. I don't know if anybody's heard of like visual DJing, like visual jockeying, but I've been using motion capture in that, and it's just new on my journey. You might be a graphic artist or traditional artist. I'm a painter, a sculptor, and a lot of those traditional skills, and I will say that across all disciplines are important because you can apply those to immersive technologies and creative technologies because you have the foundational understanding. Design, you might be a game designer needing to understand game mechanics, understanding design documentation. You do a lot of documentation in this role. UI, UX, sometimes we encounter UI. And they're also not the same thing, but user interface developers, a lot of the time they're strictly 2D experience. It really takes being able to understand spatial sometimes to be able to potentially prototype or create for 3D environments. Graphic designer, creative director sometimes. Building decks, there's sometimes I might have to talk to a client, also having a lot of those interpersonal skills. Engineering, you might need to be a developer or, QA. I'm constantly QAing, writing bug tickets, and then systems designer or pipeline. It's really up to you where those parts are flexed, but it is the span. So what does my day-to-day look like? It looks like a lot of things. I'm prototyping interactive experiences, specifically right now in web-based and VR and AR platforms. Um, I write a lot of design documentation. You have to, sometimes you are the one translating for your team or communicating for your team. And so being able to have clear design documentation and a point of reference and a source of truth to come to is really important, so everyone's on the same page. Documentation is important. You might be collaborating with different types of people always: directors, engineers, UX, UI, producers, project management. And so it's really important to be able to speak that language because you might have to change and code switch in a way to be able to communicate most effectively. Um, I'm bringing technical solutions to creative problems or creative thinking to technical constraints. A lot of the time, I might find that an engineer kind of needs to know what something might look like for their implementation. A lot of conversations have to happen, and you have to meet them where they are. You work across real-time engines, XR platforms, LED volumes, and now AI tools. And then also, I host a lot of demos with my team, with our clients. And so conducting live sessions, iterating in real time, can be and is important in this role for me. So what is the draw to this space, right? What is the draw of being multi-hyphenate and being able to do it all? Well, sometimes, the way a lot of creative technologists I know started is they had to make their own projects and they had to do everything. So, that's kind of how I got into this space and was able to continue and maintain my interest in this space. A lot of the industries are beginning to really converge with these virtual production and immersive media pipelines. We're seeing things like the sphere. We're seeing volumes used not just for film, but for human experience, right? Live events are being transformed. People are no longer trying to just watch things. They want to be a part of the story. And I think because we've become so we've been put in such an information rich place, right? We have information at our fingertips that sometimes we lose that experience. Sometimes we're so here that we're not there and we're not engaging. And so I think after COVID, everyone was kind of sick of being in the house and kind of being alone. And not all alone. I enjoyed my solitude, I'm not gonna lie. But I didn't have a bad time. But wanting to engage people again. AI tools are reshaping what a single person can do. Um, you know, I am a person who is, I'm not completely a yay AI, but I'm not completely no AI, you know. I think we live in a world, and I'll talk more about, my perspective, but I think we live in a very ever evolving world. And so tools like AI were meant to help us. However, we have to prepare ourselves from an environmental standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, from a social and economical standpoint, in order to be able to take on a lot of these tools that are being introduced. And I think it is the responsibility of the thinkers, the builders, in order to do so. We're embracing the multi hyphenates, right? That's us, the people who can design, develop. They're the artists. We're no longer an anomaly. We are an asset. Foundational creative skills, like I said before, are very transferable, and we're going places we've never seen before, right? The pipelines are changing. This is an ever evolving ecosystem. New things are coming out each month. People are doing R&D constantly, and we're finding new ways to connect with people. And so I think that's what the draw is. And I think that's what's kept me invested. So let's start, right? When you kind of get into it, it's like, okay, I want a job now. How do I do that? I think building a competitive portfolio is your first step. Um, Showing the process and not just the final product. And when I say that, I say do it dirty, do it, not done. Start recording those working sessions right now. In an AI generated world and in AI generated content, there is the need now and the desire for people to see the process. That's what makes art art, the process. I believe so. Um, so anybody can just drop a final image of something, but showing how you got there proves that it's yours and you understand it. So even when I'm just messing around and working in Unreal or anything, I'm screen recording. I'm using OBS, which is free. I'm using Vimeo, which can be a Google Chrome extension. And even if I don't have that, I'm using Snipping Tool, and that also has a recording feature. And I'm organizing those by my projects, and I'm keeping record of that just in case. You can take screenshots at major milestones and works in progress, not just when it's done. And me, a perfectionist, usually only likes to show my work when it's done, but I make sure that I keep my entire process. Um, Process videos can play on your portfolio in the background, or you can use them as content later, right? Getting before and afters, getting workflows, getting node graphs, getting, your befores of your models, right? And keep iterating, showing how you think, refine your process, right? Identify what key challenges you're facing, and then show the outcomes. What were the views like, or the awards, or client feedback, or just lessons learned, right? These are important things to show people the process and not just the final product. Get media of you in action. That's actually super important. I think a lot of people forget to take pictures of themselves. Representation matters. People want to see you doing the thing. They want to see you doing the thing because you resonate with somebody. Somebody who looks like you or goes the places you goes or likes the things that you like, you might inspire somebody else. So people want to see you doing that thing behind the camera, behind the keyboard, you know. Um, that builds trust and it makes you look and feel like a real human. So get photos of yourselves on set, at events, collaborating. Even a shot of you on your at your desk is valuable because people want to connect with people. So don't just hide behind the work. Your portfolio doesn't have to be one dimensional, right? We are multifaceted. And so our portfolios can reflect the full range of the people, the person, the places that we are, right? Our personal work, our professional work, our community work. As long as it's presented cohesively, people are going to want to see that you have depth and not just skills, right? And so I try to show not just my professional work, not just my creative interest, but also when I'm public speaking or even when I'm working my community, right? Showing work in the community also contributes, to showing that you care about something, right? Empathy at your core genuinely shines through. And people want to work with people who have empathy. People want to know that I can trust you on your team. People want to know that when times get tough, can I rely on you? And that's very important. And so being able to show the dimensions of who you are is also super important when it comes to that. So, what do hiring teams want to see when they're looking at your portfolio, right? Not just a here's what I made. Let's start with the problem. You show a range across curated projects, each one showing something different. You don't need to show everything if you don't want to, but it's nice to have multiple, like 3 to 5 projects to show. Your process, tools, and the technology used. Be very specific about that because certain companies and organizations use certain tools. And also, if you're interested in certain organizations, know the tools that they're using or like, see what they're using. Because then you can start kind of acclimating to a lot of those tools as well. What challenges did you face and how did you approach those solutions, right? Well, I encountered this issue, and so I took these very definitive steps to get there. A lot of the times, we forget to mention the challenges, and learning moments are very important here. What are the solutions? And also your specific role. How did you contribute to a collaborative environment? What did you do? Who are the people that you talk to? Who are the teams or the stakeholders that you came across? And then what are some of your outcomes? Any stats, any feedback, any testimonials? How can you enrich someone in knowing what you went through? And I just wanted to give some resources and some tools to build and host your portfolio. I am not against, let me rephrase the wording. I am totally for templates, okay? They're a great starting point, especially if you have so much content, right? Don't let the perfect setup stop you from launching. It has stopped me from launching so many times, because I tried to be perfect when I just needed to get it out to start. And so I really recommend Wix. Squarespace is also an easy one. Cargo Collective, if you want something that's like a little more sleek. Um, Adobe Portfolio, it's very clean. And it comes with your Creative Cloud subscription if you have one. ReadyMag, great for visual work more so. Behance, and then GitHub's pages. If you have a lot of code-based work or technical portfolios, GitHub pages is also a really good one as well. And so let's talk about a couple of core skills, right? And AI as a tool. I think sometimes it's very easy to think of it as a behemoth because it can be, by the way it's presented to us. So some technical skills, right? In when we're thinking about virtual production, when we're thinking about immersive media, real-time engines and virtual production, right? We're thinking of Unreal. If you're interested in Unreal and you're interested in LED walls, and volumes, in display, in camera VFX, right? Virtual camera workflows, really good for cinematic design. Or even if you're interested in more characters and metahumans, we have Unity that's good for. Unity is really, I would say, really good for game development, mobile game development, really XR for sure. I would say VR as well. Um, Unreal. I love Unreal for giving me a very beautiful, juicy like environment. Unity is really good when I'm thinking game mechanics. LED volumes, onset virtual production pipelines, and knowledge, real-time compositing and color science, scripting. And those are just to name a few. 3D, VFX, and motion. So when we think of 3D, you'll hear DCC, digital content creation. Those are like the Mayas, which is more industry standard. But if you want to start without needing a subscription, Blender, Cinema 4D, we've got Houdini. There's also Nuke as well if you're into like particle systems, and like rotoscoping and compositing. We've got motion graphics, After Effects, DaVinci Resolve, and Notch. We also have motion capture. The first thing I learned motion capture was the Makopi, which as you can see in this picture. And then I learned the OptiTrack, which is, well, in the case that I learned was a 12 camera system. There's also Stipe, that's also very much so industry standard. If you're interested in getting the motion capture and you're new into the space and you want a solution that is a little more on the affordable side, the Makopi's are about $4.99 right now in the market. Uh, Now digital twins are a big thing. So photogrammetry, Gaussian splats, and scanning and LiDAR scanning. LiDAR is actually on your phone, your Apple phone, if you have an Apple, if you're iOS, but I'm actually gonna get rid of mine soon. So scanning for environments, taking loads of pictures and creating a digital twin. It's so important in the process in spatial design and spatial layout, right? That really helps us so that we can have as accurate as possible when it comes to, planning these spaces, getting our clients to as close as accurate as possible so that they're making these decisions before they have to give out money, right? And when you start talking to them in those types of ways, that really sells it. Animation, rigging, simulation systems. AR, oh, XR and immersive. That was during my time at NASA. I was looking at my onboarding space. So AR, VR, mixed reality, right? These are some SDKs that are useful as well as, different tools. Spatial audio, if you're into, sound, 360 video workflows, right? Haptics, physical and digital interaction design. And then I don't like to call them soft skills because there ain't nothing soft about being able to adapt. There's nothing soft about that. I don't like the word soft skills. I think it's actually really it can be really hard to know how to have strong interpersonal and professional skills, especially, when everything's happy go lucky, that's fine. But when things get hard, how do you react? How's your visual storytelling, composition, and cinematic thinking? What does your cross-disciplinary communication look like? How do you speak to people across disciplines and also get them to communicate as well? How do you prioritize in a rapid paced environment, right? If you have multiple projects, I'm working on at least 3 or 4 projects at a time, right? With short deadlines and turnarounds, especially as a prototyper. I'm moving from team to team, but I'm lucky to have a core team right now, but we're creating iteratively, rapidly. Are you adaptable? This field changes. So sometimes we might be working very hard on this, but then pivot. I had to learn not to get stuck on my work. I had to learn how to not uh get my feelings hurt if I had to pivot of something I've been working on. Curiosity, right? And self-directed learning. Are you able to understand and learn things even when you don't have as much direction as you need, as you think you need? Are you a go-getter? Are you reliable? Do you show up? Do you meet deadlines? I also want to talk about AI as a tool, right? I believe in the co-design principle, right? I don't think it's the idea to learn AI because it's trending, and you might hear a lot about, well, how do you use AI in an interview? I think companies sometimes chase trends without really building sustainable foundations on how to walk, how to walk in that. So they have to walk it back. And we've seen that a lot with, the metaverse and NFTs and crypto. Well, not crypto. We're still using crypto, but NFTs. And so it's like, what is AI actually good at, and when is it the right tool? I think the most important thing is we need to co-design with AI and not hand it everything. I think human guidance, judgment, and being able to actually direct it is how we keep it in check and make sure that it's useful. The best outputs are come from a skilled human who takes that foundation and pushes it further. And so, what is it good at, right? Understanding and learning from data, analyzing patterns from large sets, and then building insights after it's aggregated all of that information. It is able to adapt and improve and evolve over time. And so it can make predictions based on inputs, right? Mirroring adaptation. So it's really helpful with troubleshooting. I'm asking a lot of the time, I ask for, like, okay, well, I'm experiencing this issue. What should I do next? Problem solving based on foundational, well defined steps. We're not replacing human creativity. It frees up your time, right? It should handle the repetitive and foundational tasks. So it gives people more capacity to focus on the things they like to do. We were meant to create, we're humans, right? And so it gives us more time by filling in the gaps for under resourced teams who need to move potentially fast, but also, move within their capacity. What AI is not. There's a very dry slide because I am very dry about this. I feel this very to my soul. It is not a cost cutting tool designed to eliminate jobs, despite what mainstream corporations are selling right now. It is not a replacement for foundational knowledge. If you don't understand the process, you cannot guide the output. It is not a replacement for real human creativity, and it is not always the right solution. Some problems are more straightforwardly solved without it. How do we keep up with the market, right? Um, well, One, read the job descriptions that you're actually applying for. They'll tell you exactly what they're looking for. Communities and conferences, SIGGRAPH, at South by Southwest, CES. Even if you're not able to attend, they always have the videos that they play after on some of the coolest things that come out. If something interests you, run towards it and learn more about it. Follow some great studios and the creatives and the tool makers and watch their case studies. Look on LinkedIn has a lot of case studies. A lot of these a lot of these what are these? A lot of these studios will put out case studies and tell you what they're working on because they are thought leaders in this space. Um, Also YouTube, right? Find a YouTube creator that you really enjoy, and also, uh, tap in, become a part of that community. Interviews. So the interview mindset, have confidence. For me, it's like I just gotta get past the part where you say come in because I love to talk, right? Companies want to hear your action items. They don't necessarily just want to hear philosophies, right? Steps and tools. How did you do it? Not just what you believe about it. An interview is a conversation, not an interrogation, right? So you're evaluating them just as much as they're evaluating you, right? You be prepared to have thoughtful questions to know what kind of organization you're stepping into. Confidence comes from preparation, right? Know your work, know your process, bring visuals, even about 5 slides if you don't want to just go through your portfolio. And about me, a project one, a project two, what are the skills? Why this role? Practice. Say your stories out loud before every interview. And then prepare 3 strong project stories. A situation. What did you do? What is your outcome? It's okay to pause and think before you answer. Sometimes I notice people start talking fast because they want to seem like they know the answer, but then miss actually answering the question. It's really helpful to pause, take a second, and think about what they're asking you so that you don't have to ask, did I answer your question afterwards? And then be honest about what you don't know. It's more credible than pretending that you do. And then you can say, well, I have these adaptability skills to be able to find the answer. Communication across teams. Know your audience, right? One of the most valuable things is to be able to translate your ideas to whoever you're talking to. The same concept can be communicated differently depending on who you're talking to. Engineers, they like specs, numbers, data, not aesthetic or feelings, right? You want to provide reproducible steps, system specifications, logs, right? Version numbers. Use more structured formats like spreadsheets. They love Google Suite. I love Google Suite. I love spreadsheets. I'm going to speak in first person because I love spreadsheets. I love bullet pointed documents on Word, outlines, right? Or on Word or Frame or Notion. Frame an issue as here's what the expected behavior was and here's what actually happened, right? Give them the exact inputs so they can run the diagnostics, right? Very logic based. Designers and artists, they need story, flow, right? Purpose. What are we doing this for? Give me the feels. Discuss the interactions, discuss the look and feel, discuss the emotional tone. Use tools like Figma, especially if you're in your UI, Canva to present for presentations. Miro is a big one, as far as like community brainstorming on one single place. Storyboards, wireframes, mood boards, concept art, inspiration boards. Project managers and clients want to know what are the outcomes, what is the timeline, what is the budget, how am I going to make decisions, right? What is the bottom line? Use those help them understand stakeholder expectations. What is the scope, right? Milestones, blockers, using language like that, dependencies, deliverables, tools that are being used in professionally are like Jira, Confluence, right? Asana, and then translating those technical constraints into plain text, right? You don't have to use all the technical jargon. Does this match what you had in mind? Finding meaningful opportunities. I'm almost done. Finding meaningful opportunities. LinkedIn, use it right. LinkedIn jobs are an option, right? Just applying to things, and traditional applications have their place as well. You can send out a resume, but just understand that you're letting 2 pages do all the talking for you. And the goal is to get in front of people before the job is even posted. And I think that is something that is super helpful, right? Looking up roles and companies you're drawn to, and then finding those people who actually work there, right? Don't be afraid to reach out to someone that you see has a role at a job that you're interested in. And having a genuine message that asks for about 20 minutes of their time. That goes a long way. Most people are very happy to talk about themselves, for one, but also to share advice. This industry is about knowledge sharing, especially when you're passionate about something. People want to invest in people, right? And so learn how to be investable. Follow up after every conversation with a thank you or something valuable if you can. Get in the room, right? Literally, get in the room. Many of these virtual production organizations host networking events frequently and often for free, right? There are different types of fests, SIGGRAPH, right? Unreal Fest, right? Go to those community gatherings, go to those meetups for companies you're interested in, meet people in real time. There are fellowships that offer free or paid opportunities. BRIC Foundation, right? Google Creative Fellowship actually just is dropped a 6-month program. We also have the GRX Immersive Academy, which is the academy that I went through. AI on the Lot and Disguise After Dark are communities that are really, oh, and Epic as well. um, they're communities that often meet. And then we have organizations like South Bay Workforce, right, that are offering opportunities as well as a GOG. Get in those rooms, they exist. And then networking that doesn't feel gross because I love a genuine connection, right? A lot of the times it feels like you have to do it to get the job. And for me, it's all about alignment. I try not to force my networking. If it works, it does, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Comment thoughtfully on work that you actually admire. Share your process publicly if you want to. Um, I share my process when I'm done, but that's just myself. But people want to know what you're building, right? They want to learn. They don't want to know what you're learning. Contribute to the communities you care about and give before you take. And then be a person people want to work with. That starts well before any job opening. And so, just to wrap it up, your portfolio is your argument to start. If we are applying, make it intentional, process forward, and human. The T shape is your North Star. Build your range and own a depth. And then communication is your superpower. Learn to speak every room's language. AI is a tool, not a trend to chase. Use it where it genuinely solves something. And then the field rewards people who stay curious, show up, and contribute. Um, I want to open the floor for questions. This QR code will actually take you to a brief survey, but also it'll allow me to have your email so I can send out to you the PDF that accompanies this 45-minute work discussion. I send you resources as well as a little bit about me and how to connect with me, as well as how to connect with some of the communities that I brought up today. But that is all I have for you. And I just want to thank you guys so much for the opportunity for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you so much, Raegan. That was so incredibly informative. And there were so many nuggets in that presentation that I know our audience would love to go back into the recording once it's up on our YouTube later this week, to glean all of those good bits of advice. I do want to remind everyone to, share your questions with us in the Q&A. We haven't received any yet. Maybe because Raegan, you have answered all of the questions as we went along with your presentation. But yeah, I encourage folks, don't be shy. As Raegan said, let's make this a conversation. What Anything that stood out to you, anything that you wanted to clarify while we have Raegan live? And Raegan, great presentation too.
Thank you. No, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and just in general, if you would like to connect with me, oh, let me actually go back to the QR code just in case anybody wants
Oh yeah,
to.
that would be great. So folks can scan that
Yeah.
as they can. We've got a question from Ronald who asks, "Hi Raegan, what XR immersive experiences would you be interested in engaging with for the upcoming LA 28 Olympic events?" Ooh,
Oh my God, that's such a cool. Wow. So
speaking of everything just turning more immersive.
right. I think something that I would be interested in engaging with is an opportunity to to be a spectator, right? But not from a standpoint of being in the room, right? I think access is really important, and a lot of the time, there is a lack of access for being able to access some of those types of events, and really getting the look and feel. So I would love to see what it felt like to be in the room with maybe like a VR headset. If like I was watching the gymnastics, I think that would be because I've never been to the Olympics and I've never been able to like be in those rooms, but I would actually love an experience where I was watching from inside, and that'll probably happen with like some sort of 360 camera setup and a VR headset. I feel like that's actually pretty doable and a quick and easy thing. We just got to get in and somebody drop a 360 camera in there. But I totally would love to do that um, as far as the Olympics. Something that also comes to my mind, I think a lot around uh, how we're going to be transporting around, especially that I'm living in Los Angeles. There's been a lot of conversations around having autonomous vehicles, and we have Waymos all over the streets. I don't know if you guys do yet, but one of the organizations that I do community work with is called Chaos Network, but we have an initiative called Sankofa City, and it is an initiative for autonomous vehicles to be able to give free transportation to the surrounding elders and the commuters in the community during that time, as well as just in general, because transportation has become so expensive as well. And so, an additional aspect to that initiative is that inside of the cars there is an augmented reality element where utilizing potentially either your phone or the windows in the space, windows in the car, you actually are able to see augmented reality overlays of different aspects of the city to learn different cultural, artistic information about the city you're around. And that'd be really important for, people who are visiting, especially we're going to have people from all over the world. So to get a little couple of nuggets of where they're at from an immersive standpoint is really important. And that's something that we're working towards and hoping that we can accomplish as far as access to transportation, but just access to knowledge, and that is the an idea by Ben Caldwell. He started Chaos Network in about 40 years ago in Leimert Park, and that's a project that I've become really passionate about as well.
Really cool. I think those are two fantastic ideas, right? And I would love to see both of them come to life at the next Olympics.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Any other questions? Raegan, I know we talked a lot, or you talked a lot in presentation about the importance of communication skills, and the ability to talk about your process, to be able to talk about how you solved a problem, how you iterated and found a solution um, through creative technologies. And I wonder, do you have any advice for how to get better at that? Like how to, approach those kinds of conversations, especially once you do get into the interview room?
Yeah, definitely. Well, to start, I like to think of people as just that, people and humans. And so when I first was doing a lot of interviewing, like in my younger years, I would get really nervous because I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to the manager, or I'm talking to, actually my first interview at Magnopus was with the CEO. And so to really humanize people and think of them as just a person, that one started to help. Two, practicing with friends and mentors that you really trust. I think mentors are actually really a good place to start as well. Having them ask you questions, especially if they're already in that space, and getting feedback from a trusted source, that also definitely helps because you can mess up as many times as you want and continue to try and try again. And then I would say from a more of a social standpoint, just getting comfortable with talking, and expressing some of the work that you do to your friends, to new people that you meet, right? Make it something that is just becomes natural. And also, I would say if you have the opportunity to do projects that you're passionate about, do that because it becomes so much more easier to speak when it's coming from a genuine place. A lot of the times, it 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 reflects when people are speaking about projects they had to do versus projects that they wanted to do. And it shows, and people light up, and there's a difference. And so uh, I would say that is another thing too, if you have the opportunity to work on projects you're passionate about, that helps you communicate it better because you know it in and out, right? Practicing with people that you trust, like a mentor, and then also just reframing your view of people as just people who also understand that we make mistakes and also understand what it's like to interview. And so humanizing them and humanizing yourself in the experience. You don't have to be perfect. Most people will understand you if you especially if you have all of the other aspects, your resume, your portfolio to accompany.
Great answer. All right. Well, on that vein, we've got a question from Joshua who says, I work with a lot of introverts, high school students who are working in digital media spaces. Do you think technical skills are more important for them getting into the industry or soft, or I know you said interpersonal skills, Raegan, being able to talk to people, both are important. I know, like, where should their focus really be? Or put another way, would you rather hire a digital savant who can't talk to you? Or would you rather hire someone whose company you can enjoy, who doesn't necessarily have all the tech knowledge and skills?
That's a good question, and I think there's a range of both in the industry. It depends on the roles that you're looking for and where you plan to go, I think is really important. When I was working at Intel, I was working in the BIOS software engineer. There were people who had been working in the BIOS for years, 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 right? Um, they were very comfortable where they were as engineers. They became principal engineers, yes, but they were very comfortable with being introverted. And I think there's something beautiful about being okay with being with yourself, right? Um, in the principal type engineer role, uh, not necessarily being like a manager, they don't have to do as much talking, right? There is a place for everyone in these spaces, right? And so if that is a desire to, stay more introverted and work, diligently with yourself most of the times, there is place for that. Um, Now, if you're looking to grow your career in more leadership management, right? If you're looking to be a creative director, if you're looking to be a lead, right? And managing people, having those skills are going to be important, right? And so, it really depends on where your focus lies, on where you see yourself going. A lot of these, a lot of the time, it's not what's on you, it's what's in you. And so sometimes people find themselves to be people who communicate very naturally and are leaders very naturally. But sometimes people have to grow to that, and so they may do Toastmasters or and take public speaking, you know, classes in order to help with that. So I'm going to say it depends on what your desires are for your future endeavors in this space. Do you see yourself as someone who continues to work more independently? Then um, have your focus be on your technical skills and continue to really push on those because a strong portfolio and strong skills is very valuable. But if you also see yourself being more in leadership positions and more management positions, then I would focus also too on how you communicate and your problem solving in that sense too.
Great. All right, Raegan. Well, I know that we are a minute over time, but I do want to just get my last thank you in, Raegan. Thank you so much for being a guest on our speaker series here today. Folks, just a reminder, I inserted a link to our YouTube channel to catch the recording of Raegan's session, so you can refer back to all of her fantastic notes and nuggets of advice. Our speaker series will pick back up in April, where we talk a little bit more about creative technology in the way of smart avatars. So if you're interested in that, make sure to RSVP on our website, brickfoundation.org. And if you haven't already, our next major event is our BRIC Summit that's coming up on March 29th, specifically our Talent and Education Day. If you like, these virtual learning experiences, we have a full roster of webinars and upskilling sessions that you can attend um, to learn more about careers in entertainment, media, and tech. So definitely make sure to sign up for that. That's 2026 bricksummit.com. I'll throw that in the chat there. And Raegan, thank you so much for joining us today once
Thank you
again.
so much, Sarah. You
All
guys
right,
have a great one.
everyone. Thanks, everyone.